Hundreds of thousands of residents of Khartoum have fled to Sudan's Jazirah state. Authorities there have banned the monopoly of goods and commodities, as many of those there are facing a lack of shelter, food, medicine and aid. Our correspondent Naba Muhyiddin tells us more.
I'm here in Jazirah state for a few days trying to report the humanitarian situation and the needs of thousands or hundreds of thousands of families who fled the war in Khartoum, and right now they are in Jazirah state. There is a lack of shelter, food, medicine and aid. The government of Jazirah opened their doors for hundreds of thousands of families. They are approximately about 1 million people came from the capital Khartoum, and right now they are in Jazirah. The government is trying to provide them with food, shelter, medicine and life necessities. And this morning the state announced a state of emergency and banned or put laws for monopoly of goods and commodities, especially fuel, medicine and any necessities including flour too. So right now the situation is relative calm and peace, but there is fears of the impact of the war in Khartoum and extension of the fighting to Jazirah, especially that it's only 180 kilometers from Khartoum, and also because the road linking the two cities is not safe. And it was also in the war zone few days ago when the RSF tried to flee from Khartoum from eastern Nile city and use that road in their battles. So right now people are fearing any immediate attacks by the RSF or the attack back by the military. There is high security tensions here, and there is preparation for receiving more displaced people from Khartoum right now, but there is fears also of lack of food, medicine and aid here in Jazirah. Naba Muhyiddin, CGTN, Jazirah State, Sudan.
Well, let's now cross over to Kholoud Kaya, the founding director of Confluence Advisory, a think tank based in Khartoum. Kholoud, thank you for joining us on the program. So how would you characterize the Sudan security situation at the moment?
Well, it's quite obviously very dire. There is meant to be a ceasefire in place for 72 hours, but as your correspondent noted, there are still clashes and there are still signs of conflict very much there. The problem is that these ceasefires are being negotiated seemingly only for the evacuation of foreigners and not for the bringing in of aid that is desperately needed. The international community therefore needs to reassess its priorities and ensure that it's able to support a large proportion of Sudan's people in Khartoum and elsewhere to access humanitarian support.
Well, world leaders are appealing with the two top generals to end the conflict. But other than that, other than such verbal appeals, what is it that can compel them to negotiate for an end to the fighting?
Well, the difficulty is that both generals see that their victory is in sight. And therefore, neither general wants to cede any time, for example, during a ceasefire, in order to lose out potentially on a military victory. And that also is linked to the fact that this conflict is existential for both General Burhan and General Hemeti. Both of them realize and acknowledge that it's very difficult for either of them to survive this if they lose. Now, that should make them want to come to the negotiating table. But as I say, because they have access to support, financing and arms from their neighbors and from their regional partners, they think they can win this. This makes getting to a negotiating table very difficult. However, so far, we haven't seen any international actor put leverage on the table. Most of the contact with and engagement with the generals has been around pleading with them to bring about a ceasefire and to commit to a ceasefire. And as we've seen, that doesn't work.
Well, the situation with Omar al-Bashir has remained unclear for days. Why is that? What sort of interests are influencing the events around former President Bashir?
Well, quite clearly, Omar al-Bashir's exit from prison and his ability to, be out and influence the Islamists that are very much backing General Burhan and also to be able to access assets, financial and political assets that the Muslim Brotherhood may have outside of the country, and bring that to bear in the conflict in Sudan will absolutely prolong the conflict. So it's quite dangerous in that sense. In another way, it's also dangerous because General Hemeti, the head of the paramilitary forces, has been using the narrative that this is an Islamist coup in order to justify his actions and the actions of his troops in Khartoum. So this is bad news all round.
Well, Khulud, it seems some public services in Khartoum are beginning to resume. Who exactly is running things? Who is ensuring that public servants report for duty? And who is catering to the welfare of refugees or those who have been injured?
Well, just to be clear, there are no public services that are resuming at all. People haven't been able to go to work, civil servants, even people who work at the locality level, let alone at the national or state level, have not been able to go to work. And so there has been a massive sort of bottleneck in terms of getting cash out of banks, public or private banks, in terms of electricity supply, in terms of water, sanitation, in terms of just picking up some of the corpses on the street. That hasn't been possible. People have found it difficult to bury their loved ones, to go to hospitals that have been raided and ransacked by particularly the paramilitary forces. So life as we knew it 2 weeks ago has effectively ceased to exist in Sudan. No one is running the country. That much is clear. There was barely a country, barely a government after the coup anyway in 2021. And so Sudan has been seeing this deterioration in real time of the state, which has been catalyzed by the events starting 2 weeks ago.
Khulud Kaya joining us there from Khartoum with that update. Thank you.